Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the starship Endeavour, watching the stars drift past through the main viewing screen. The ship had been traveling for 3 weeks through empty space, heading toward a new solar system that Earth's scientists wanted to explore. Jake was tired, but alert. Space exploration was dangerous work, and he never let his guard down. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Navigator Pete Collins sat at his station, checking their course. Communications. Officer Amy Chen monitored radio signals from nearby space. Chief Engineer Ryan Foster was in the engine room, making sure everything ran smoothly. Dr. Lisa Hayes was in the medical bay, reviewing health reports from the crew. Jake liked his team. They had worked together for 2 years, and trusted each other completely. The Endeavour was not the biggest ship in the human fleet, but it was fast and reliable. It carried a crew of 45 people, all volunteers who wanted to see what lay beyond Earth's solar system. Amy Chen suddenly straightened at her station. Her fingers moved quickly over her controls as she adjusted her headset. "Commander Morrison, I'm picking up a transmission. It's very strong and coming from multiple directions." Jake walked over to her station. "What kind of transmission?" "It's not like anything I've seen before. The signal is using frequencies we don't normally monitor. But there's something else. The message is in perfect English." Pete looked up from his navigation controls. "That's impossible. We're hundreds of light years from Earth. No human ships are supposed to be in this region." Amy's face grew pale as she listened to her headset. "Commander, you need to hear this. The message is being broadcast on all channels simultaneously. Someone wants to make sure every human in space receives it." Jake put on a spare headset and listened. A clear, commanding voice spoke in English with a strange accent he had never heard before. The words were precise and formal, like someone reading an official document. "Attention all human vessels and colonies. This message comes from Her Royal Highness Princess Lyra Vextera of the Zephyrian Empire. By order of the Galactic Council and Imperial Decree, all human ships must comply with the following edict immediately." Jake felt his stomach drop. The Galactic Council was real. Humans had wondered for decades if other intelligent life existed in the galaxy. Now they had their answer, and it did not sound friendly. The voice continued. "The human species possesses genetic material essential for the survival of advanced galactic civilizations. All human vessels must surrender biological samples from their crews within 72 hours. Failure to comply will result in immediate isolation of all human territories and potential military intervention." Amy removed her headset with shaking hands. "Commander, there's more. The message includes coordinates where we're supposed to deliver the samples. And there's a warning that several human ships have already been intercepted by something called the Zephyrian Fleet." Jake's mind raced. This changed everything. Humanity was not alone in the galaxy, but their first contact was a demand, not a greeting. Someone out there wanted human DNA and was willing to use force to get it. "Get me Dr. Hayes on the comm immediately," Jake ordered, "and send an emergency message to Earth Command. They need to know about this." Within minutes, Dr. Hayes arrived on the bridge. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and steady hands. Jake trusted her medical knowledge more than anyone else in the fleet. "Lisa, we need you to analyze something. We just received a transmission claiming that human genetic material is somehow special or necessary for alien survival." Dr. Hayes raised an eyebrow. "That's an interesting claim. Human DNA is certainly unique, but I'd need to know more about these aliens to understand why they might want it." Ryan Foster's voice came through the ship's communication system from the engine room. "Commander, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures in the area. 3 large objects are approaching our position at high speed." Jake felt the hair on his neck stand up. "How large?" "Each one is at least 10 times bigger than the Endeavour. And Commander, they're not using any propulsion system I recognize." These ships are moving faster than anything humans have ever built. Amy. Chen worked frantically at her station. I'm trying to contact Earth Command, but something is jamming our long-range communications. We can receive messages, but we can't send anything beyond local range. Through the viewing screen, Jake saw 3 massive shapes approaching from different directions. The ships were sleek in silver, with smooth curves that seemed to flow like water. They moved with impossible grace for something so large. No human engineer had ever designed anything like them. Red alert, Jake announced. All hands to battle stations. The crew moved quickly to their emergency positions. The Endeavor was armed, but its weapons were designed for asteroid mining and defense against space pirates. Jake doubted they would be effective against ships this advanced. Pete Collins studied his instruments. Commander, they're surrounding us. We can't outrun them, and we can't fight them. What are your orders? Jake stared at the alien ships on the screen. Each one could probably destroy the Endeavor without effort. But he was responsible for 45 lives, and he would not surrender them without understanding what was happening. Open a communication channel, he told Amy. Channel open, Commander. Jake took a deep breath. This is Commander Jake Morrison, of the human starship Endeavor. We received your transmission, but we need to understand what you want from us and why. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then a new voice came through the speakers. This one was different from the recorded message. It was female, younger, and carried authority that made Jake stand straighter without thinking about it. Commander Morrison, I am Princess Lyra Vexera. Your species is in possession of something my people desperately need to survive. We do not wish to harm you, but we cannot allow you to leave until this matter is resolved. Jake looked around at his crew. Fear and determination mixed on their faces. Dr. Hayes stepped forward. Your Highness, we are scientists and explorers, not soldiers. If you need our help, perhaps we can discuss this peacefully. There was a pause before the princess replied. Dr. Hayes, your medical knowledge will be most valuable in our discussions. Commander Morrison, you will accompany me to our capital, world. Your crew will remain safe aboard your ship, but you cannot leave until we reach an agreement. Jake realized he had no choice. The alien ships had surrounded them completely, and resistance would mean the death of his entire crew. But something in the princess's voice suggested she was not entirely comfortable with this situation either. We'll comply, Jake said finally. But I want your word that my crew will not be harmed. You have my word, Commander. Prepare to be escorted to the Zephyrian capital. Our survival, and perhaps yours, depends on what happens next. The journey to the Zephyrian capital took 2 days. The Endeavor traveled in the center of the alien formation, surrounded by ships that could destroy it in seconds. Jake Morrison spent most of the time in his quarters, thinking about what lay ahead. He had decided to trust Princess Lyra, but trust was a dangerous thing when dealing with unknown aliens who demanded human DNA. Dr. Lisa Hayes worked in her medical lab, trying to understand what the Zephyrians might want with human genetic material. She had run every test she could think of, but without knowing anything about Zephyrian biology, she could only guess. Ryan Foster kept the engines running smoothly, while Pete Collins studied the alien ships through the Endeavor's sensors. Amy Chen monitored communications, hoping to learn something useful from Zephyrian radio chatter when they finally arrived at the capital world. Jake was amazed by what he saw. The planet was covered in gleaming cities that stretched from pole to pole. Massive towers reached into the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to float without support. Ships moved through the air in perfect formations, following invisible traffic patterns that never caused collisions, Commander Pete said. From his station, I'm reading a population of over 20 billion on this planet alone. The technology here is centuries ahead of anything humans have developed. Jake nodded grimly. If the Zephyrians wanted to take human DNA by force, There was nothing humanity could do to stop them. Earth's entire population was only 8 billion people, and human technology was primitive compared to what he saw below. The Endeavor was guided to a landing platform near the largest city. As soon as the ship touched down, Jake could see hundreds of Zephyrian soldiers surrounding the platform. They wore dark blue uniforms and carried weapons that hummed with energy. Their faces were hidden behind masks that covered everything except their eyes. A voice came through the ship's communication system. "Commander Morrison and Dr. Hayes, please prepare to disembark. A royal escort is waiting to take you to the palace." Jake straightened his uniform and checked his sidearm. It probably would not help against Zephyrian technology, but it made him feel better. Dr. Hayes gathered her medical scanner and a datapad containing her research on human genetics. "Take care of the ship," Jake told Ryan Foster. "If something happens to us, try to get word back to Earth." Ryan nodded. "Understood, Commander. Good luck." Jake and Dr. Hayes walked down the ship's ramp onto the alien world. The air was thin, but breathable, and the gravity was slightly heavier than Earth normal. The platform was made of a smooth material that seemed to glow with inner light. A tall figure approached them. Unlike the soldiers, this person wore no mask. Jake got his first clear look at a Zephyrian, and he was surprised by how human they appeared. The alien was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. Long silver hair fell to the shoulders, and the face was sharply angular, but somehow beautiful. "I am General Kexmore, advisor to Her Royal Highness," the figure said in perfect English. "You will come with me immediately." Jake noticed that the general's voice carried no warmth. The dark eyes studied the humans like specimens in a laboratory. Dr. Hayes stepped closer to Jake, obviously uncomfortable under that cold stare. They were led to a vehicle that hovered silently above the ground. The ride through the city gave Jake a chance to see more of Zephyrian civilization. The buildings were works of art as much as structures, with flowing lines and surfaces that changed color as they passed. But something was wrong. The streets were mostly empty, and the few Zephyrians he saw moved slowly, as if they were tired or sick. "General Kexmore," Dr. Hayes said carefully, "your people seem to be suffering from some kind of health problem." The general's jaw tightened. "You will discuss such matters with the princess, not with me." The palace was enormous, rising into the clouds like a mountain made of crystal and metal. Guards stood at every entrance, but Jake noticed they all looked young. He saw no elderly Zephyrians anywhere, which struck him as strange for such an advanced civilization. They were led through corridors lined with artwork that seemed to move and change as they watched. Jake had never seen anything so beautiful, but the palace felt empty and cold. Their footsteps echoed in the vast spaces, and he heard no sound of normal palace life. Finally, they reached a large chamber with a throne made of what looked like living light. Sitting on the throne was Princess Lyra Vextera, and Jake was struck by how young she appeared. Like the general, she had pale blue skin and dark eyes, but her face showed intelligence and concern rather than cold calculation. "Commander Morrison." "Dr. Hayes, thank you for coming," the princess said, rising from her throne. "I apologize for the circumstances that brought you here, but time is running short for my people." Jake stepped forward. "Your Highness, we're here because you gave us no choice. But we're willing to listen if you'll explain what's happening." Princess Lyra looked at General Kexmore. "Leave us. I will speak with the humans alone." The general's eyes flashed with anger. "Your Highness, these creatures could be dangerous." "It is not wise to," I said, "leave us." The princess's voice carried absolute authority. After the general left, Princess Lyra's manner changed completely. She sat down on the steps leading to her throne and gestured for Jake and Dr. Hayes to sit as well. Suddenly she seemed less like a royal ruler and more like a young woman carrying a terrible burden. "My people are dying," she said simply. "For thousands of years, we have used technology to make ourselves stronger, smarter, and longer lived. We eliminated disease and extended our lives far beyond what nature intended. But we made a terrible mistake. Dr. Hayes leaned forward. What kind of mistake? We bred the randomness out of our genes. We made ourselves perfect, but perfection is death for any species. We can no longer reproduce naturally. Our immune systems have become so specialized that new diseases kill us easily. We are slowly going extinct, and nothing we try seems to work. Jake began to understand. And you think human DNA can help you? Princess Lyra nodded. Human genetics are messy and random, but that chaos is exactly what we need. Your species has incredible genetic diversity. You adapt to new environments and fight off diseases that would kill us. You are everything we used to be before we tried to improve ourselves. Dr. Hayes pulled out her scanner and looked at the readings she had taken of the princess. Your Highness, may I ask how old you are? I am 237 years old, but I am considered very young by our standards. Most of my people live for over 1,000 years. The problem is that we have stopped having children. In the last 50 years, fewer than 10,000 babies have been born on this world. Jake felt a chill. A population of 20 billion, with almost no new births, meant the Zephyrians would be extinct within a few generations, no matter how long they lived. But why take our DNA by force? Dr. Hayes asked. If you need our help, why not ask for it? Princess Lyra looked away. Because many of my people, including General Kexmore, believe humans are inferior creatures. They think you should be grateful, to serve a higher purpose. They want to harvest your genetic material like a resource. And what do you believe? Jake asked. The princess met his eyes. I believe we are the ones who should be grateful. You have something we threw away in our arrogance, and we have no right to take it from you. But I also know that if I cannot find a solution soon, my uncle Duke Mordain will take control of the empire. He has even less patience with diplomacy than General Kexmore. Jake exchanged glances with Dr. Hayes. They were walking into a situation that was far more complex and dangerous than either of them had imagined. But they were also dealing with someone who seemed genuinely interested in finding a peaceful solution. What exactly are you proposing? Jake asked. Princess Lyra stood and walked to a window that looked out over the city. I want your doctor to work with our scientists to find a way to help both our species. But I need to know that humans will cooperate willingly, not because they are forced to. Dr. Hayes stood as well. Your Highness, I'll need to examine some of your people and understand your biology before I can determine if human genetics can actually help you. That can be arranged. But Commander Morrison, I must warn you of something. There are other human ships being brought here against their will. My uncle's forces have been capturing them for weeks. If we cannot reach an agreement soon, those crews will become subjects for genetic experiments. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. How many ships? How many people? 7 ships so far. Nearly 300 humans. The number hit Jake like a physical blow. 300 people taken from their ships and held prisoner while aliens debated what to do with their DNA. He thought of his own crew waiting aboard the Endeavor and realized how dangerous their situation truly was. I want to see them, Jake demanded. Princess Lyra nodded. I thought you might, but I warn you, Commander, what you see may make you very angry. Try to remember that I am not responsible for my uncle's methods, even though I am trying to clean up the mess he has created. The detention facility was located beneath the palace, in a complex of rooms that Princess Lyra clearly did not want to visit. Jake Morrison and Dr. Lisa Hayes followed her through corridors that grew darker and more oppressive with each level. They descended. The princess walked with her shoulders straight, but Jake could see the tension in her movements. I want you to understand something before we go in, Princess Lyra said as they approached a heavy door guarded by 2 soldiers. What you will see was done without my knowledge or approval. My uncle Duke Mordain convinced the council that Immediate action was necessary while I was attending to other matters. Jake felt his jaw clench. Other matters while humans were being kidnapped. The princess stopped and turned to face him. Commander, I rule an empire of over 200 billion people spread across 50 worlds. While I was dealing with food shortages on the outer colonies and trying to prevent a civil war in the mining sectors, my uncle was conducting what he called emergency research. Dr. Hayes put a hand on Jake's arm. Let's see what we're dealing with before we assign blame. The soldiers opened the door, and they entered a large room filled with transparent cells. Each cell contained between 3 and 6 humans, all wearing simple gray clothing. Jake's heart sank as he saw the faces looking back at him through the clear walls. These people looked tired, confused, and frightened. A tall man with brown hair approached the front of one cell as they passed. Are you here to get us out? We've been here for weeks without any real explanation of what's happening. Jake looked at Princess Lyra, who nodded. You can speak with them. I'm Commander Jake Morrison of the Earth Fleet, Jake said to the man. We're working on getting all of you released, but I need to know what's been done to you. The man's name was Captain Tony Richards, and he had commanded a cargo ship that was intercepted while carrying supplies to a mining colony. They've been taking blood samples every few days. Sometimes they bring us to a medical facility and run tests, but they won't tell us what they're looking for or how long we'll be here. Dr. Hayes stepped closer to the cell. Have they done anything else? Any procedures or treatments? A woman in another cell answered. They tried some kind of injection on a few of us last week. The people who got it became very sick. 2 of them died. Princess Lyra's face went pale. I was not told about any deaths. Jake turned to face her, his anger barely controlled. You didn't know they were killing people with your experiments. They are not my experiments, the princess said firmly. But you are right to be angry. This is exactly why I need your help to stop this madness. They continued through the facility, and Jake counted nearly 300 humans in various cells. Some looked healthy, while others appeared weak or sick. Dr. Hayes took readings with her medical scanner whenever possible, building a picture of what the Zephyrians had been doing. In one section, they found a medical laboratory where Zephyrian scientists were working with human blood samples. Dr. Hayes asked permission to examine their equipment and was shocked by what she discovered. They're trying to isolate specific genetic sequences and inject them directly into Zephyrian test subjects, she told Jake quietly. But they don't understand how human genetics actually work. They're treating our DNA like a simple medicine, instead of recognizing it as part of a complex biological system. One of the Zephyrian scientists, a thin female with the same pale blue skin as the princess, approached them. I am Dr. Veltar. You must be the human medical officer we were told about. Dr. Hayes nodded. I'm Dr. Lisa Hayes. Can you explain what you're trying to accomplish here? Dr. Veltar gestured to a series of displays showing genetic charts. We have identified several human genetic markers that appear to provide resistance to diseases and cellular degradation. We are attempting to transfer these traits to our own people, but it's not working, Dr. Hayes observed. No, the human genetic material seems to require the presence of other human genes to function properly. When we isolate individual sequences, they become inactive or even harmful to our physiology. Jake listened to the technical discussion while watching the human prisoners. Many of them were looking at him with hope in their eyes, trusting that he would find a way to free them. The weight of that responsibility felt heavier than anything he had ever carried. Princess Lyra led them to another section of the facility, where they found something that made Jake's blood run cold. Several Zephyrians lay in medical beds, connected to machines that were clearly keeping them alive. Their skin had a grayish tint, and they appeared to be unconscious. These are volunteers from our military who agreed to undergo experimental treatments, Princess Lyra explained. As you can see, the results have been devastating. Dr. Hayes checked her scanner and shook her head. Their immune systems are completely failing. Whatever you've done to them, their bodies are rejecting it violently. Dr. Veltar approached them with data tablets. The human genetic material initially showed promise. For the first few days, the test subjects showed improved cellular regeneration and disease resistance. But then their bodies began attacking the foreign genetic material, and the damage has been irreversible. Jake felt sick as he looked at the dying Zephyrians. How many people have you killed with these experiments? 17 of our people have died, and 43 humans have been lost during the testing process. Dr. Veltar said with clinical detachment. Princess Lyra closed her eyes. I was told that only a few subjects had experienced complications. Jake grabbed the princess by the arm. You have to stop this immediately. You're murdering people from both species, and it's not even working. The princess pulled free, but did not step away. I agree completely. That is why I brought you here. Dr. Hayes, is there any way to make this process work safely? Dr. Hayes studied the data on the tablets for several minutes before answering. The problem is that you're approaching this backwards. You can't just take pieces of human DNA and expect them to work in Zephyrian bodies. Genetics doesn't work that way. Then what would work? Dr. Veltar asked. You would need to understand the entire human genetic system and find a way to integrate it gradually with Zephyrian genetics. It would require cooperation from both species and probably take years of careful research. Jake realized what Dr. Hayes was suggesting. You're talking about creating some kind of hybrid genetics. Not exactly. I'm talking about finding a way for both species to benefit from genetic exchange while maintaining their distinct identities. Humans could potentially gain some Zephyrian longevity and disease resistance, while Zephyrians could regain genetic diversity and reproductive capability. Princess Lyra looked interested. Would such a process require willing participation from both species? Absolutely. And it would need to be completely voluntary. Forced genetic material doesn't integrate properly, which is probably why your current experiments are failing so badly. A new voice interrupted their conversation. What experiments are failing? Jake turned to see a tall Zephyrian male approaching them. This one was older than the others, with silver hair and eyes that held a cold intelligence. He wore elaborate robes that marked him as someone of high rank. Princess Lyra straightened. Uncle Mordain, I was not expecting you. Duke Mordain looked at Jake and Dr. Hayes with obvious distaste. I see you have brought more human specimens to the facility. Excellent. Dr. Veltar, prepare them for immediate testing. No, Princess Lyra said firmly. Commander Morrison and Dr. Hayes are here as my guests, not as test subjects. The Duke's eyes narrowed. Niece, you seem to have forgotten that I am in charge of this research project. These humans will be tested like all the others. Jake stepped forward. I don't think so. Duke Mordain laughed. A primitive human dares to challenge me. Dr. Veltar summoned the guards. But Princess Lyra moved between Jake and her uncle. Uncle, as heir to the throne, I am ordering you to release all human prisoners immediately. This research is a failure, and continuing it will only damage our relationship with humanity. You naive child, Duke Mordain said with contempt. Humanity exists to serve our needs. They are barely more intelligent than animals, and their only value is the genetic material we can harvest from them. Dr. Hayes spoke up. Sir, if you continue with forced genetic harvesting, you will never solve your population crisis. The science simply doesn't work that way. Duke Mordain ignored her and addressed his niece. Lyra, you have been too long influenced by weak advisors. It is time for stronger leadership. Guards, arrest the princess and prepare all humans for immediate genetic extraction. Soldiers in dark blue uniforms entered the laboratory, but they hesitated when they saw Princess Lyra. Jake realized that the loyalty of the military was split between the princess and her uncle. You will obey my orders, Duke Mordain commanded. The lead soldier looked confused. Sir, the princess has not been formally removed from the line of succession. Princess Lyra stepped forward. Commander of the Guard, I am ordering you to place Duke Mordain under arrest for conducting unauthorized experiments and causing the deaths of Imperial citizens. Jake watched the confrontation with growing tension. The political situation was more complex than he had realized, and the safety of 300 human prisoners hung in the balance. He also thought about his crew aboard the Endeavor and wondered if they were safe or if Duke Mordain had already moved against them. The guard commander looked between the princess and the Duke, clearly unwilling to choose sides in what was obviously a power struggle within the royal family. Duke Mordain smiled coldly. You see, Lyra, even the guards understand who really holds power here. Your soft approach has failed, and now I will show you how to properly handle these human pests. The tension in the laboratory was thick enough to cut with a knife. Jake Morrison watched as the Zephyrian guards stood frozen between their loyalty to Princess Lyra and their fear of Duke Mordain. The Duke's cold smile suggested he was confident of victory. But Jake noticed that not all the soldiers looked comfortable with the situation. Commander of the Guard, Duke Mordain said slowly, arrest the princess and these human specimens immediately. That is a direct order from the regent. The guard commander, a scarred veteran with intelligent eyes, shook his head. Sir, you are not the regent. The princess remains heir to the throne until the council formally votes otherwise. Duke Mordain's face darkened with anger. The council will vote as I tell them to vote. I have spent months preparing for this moment. Princess Lyra stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of generations of royal blood. Guards, escort my uncle to his quarters and place him under house arrest pending a formal hearing before the full council. For a moment, Jake thought, the princess had won. Several guards moved toward the Duke, but then energy weapons appeared in the hands of other soldiers. Jake realized that Duke Mordain had prepared for this confrontation more thoroughly than the princess had expected. I'm afraid your loyal guards are outnumbered, niece, the Duke said with satisfaction. Half of the military has grown tired of your weak leadership. They want action, not endless discussions with inferior species. Dr. Lisa Hayes grabbed Jake's arm. Commander, we need to get word to the Endeavor. If the Duke takes control, our crew is in serious danger. Jake nodded, but he was more concerned about the 300 human prisoners in the cells around them. If Duke Mordain gained power, those people would likely be killed in his genetic experiments within days. The standoff continued for several tense minutes. Then a new group of soldiers entered the laboratory, and Jake's heart sank. These wore different uniforms and moved with the discipline of elite troops. They quickly surrounded Princess Lyra and her loyal guards. Excellent timing, Duke Mordain said to the new arrivals. Captain Nexstar, arrest the princess and secure all human subjects for immediate transfer to the main research facility. Captain Nexstar, a tall female with the cold eyes of a professional soldier, saluted the Duke. Yes, sir? What about the human officers? They will be the first subjects in our accelerated research program. I want to know everything about human genetics within 72 hours. Jake stepped protectively in front of Dr. Hayes. Princess, is there anything you can do to stop this? Princess Lyra looked around at the soldiers surrounding them. I'm afraid my uncle has been planning this coup for longer than I realized. But Jake, there is something you should know. Your ship is not the only human vessel in this system. Duke Mordain laughed. Did you think we would leave such a dangerous, loose end? The human ship Endeavor was boarded and secured an hour ago. Your crew is already being transported to the research facility. Jake felt rage building in his chest. If you harm any of my people, you'll what? The Duke interrupted. You're a primitive being with no power here. Your only value is what we can learn from your genetic structure. But Princess Lyra smiled grimly. Uncle, you have made the same mistake you always make. You assume that force is the only solution to every problem. What are you talking about? The princess activated a small device on her wrist. While you were gathering your soldiers, I was sending messages to the outer systems. The planetary governors have been waiting for an excuse to remove you from the council. Duke Mordaine's confident expression faltered. That's impossible. Communications are restricted, not for the royal family. Uncle, you forgot that many of our people disagree with your methods. They remember that our civilization was built on cooperation, not conquest. Jake heard the sound of distant explosions echoing through the facility. Captain Nexstar spoke quickly into her communication device, then turned to the Duke with concern. Sir, we have reports of ships entering the atmosphere. Multiple vessels are approaching the capital. Dr. Hayes checked her medical scanner and frowned. I'm detecting human life signs moving toward this location. Lots of them. Jake felt a surge of hope. The Endeavor. Princess Lyra nodded. Your chief engineer Ryan Foster is more clever than my uncle's forces expected. When they tried to board your ship, he managed to send out a distress signal before activating some kind of defensive system. Duke Mordaine grabbed the princess by the arm. What defensive system? Human technology is centuries behind ours. Jake smiled for the first time since entering the facility. Ryan used to work on mining ships before he joined the exploration fleet. Those ships carry explosive charges for breaking up asteroids. The Duke's face went pale as he understood. He turned your ship into a bomb. Not exactly. But he made it very clear that anyone trying to board the Endeavor would have a very bad day. Your soldiers decided to wait for reinforcements. More explosions shook the facility, and Jake could hear the sound of energy weapons firing in the distance. Princess Lyra's message had apparently reached more than just the planetary governors. Captain Nexstar received another message on her communicator. Sir, the Royal Guard is fighting through the upper levels. They have human soldiers with them. Jake felt confused. Human soldiers. That doesn't make sense. Dr. Hayes checked her scanner again. Jake, I'm reading genetic signatures that are definitely human, but they're not from our crew. These people have been here longer. Princess Lyra looked surprised. The prisoners, some of them must have been freed. Duke Mordaine drew an energy weapon and pointed it at the princess. This ends now. Captain Nexstar, kill the humans and prepare to evacuate the facility. But before anyone could move, the laboratory doors exploded inward. Smoke filled the room as figures in makeshift armor charged through the opening. Jake was amazed to see Captain Tony Richards leading a group of human prisoners, all carrying Zephyrian weapons they had somehow acquired. Get down, Tony shouted as his people opened fire on Duke Mordaine's soldiers. Jake grabbed Dr. Hayes and pulled her behind a laboratory table as energy bolts flew overhead. The room erupted into chaos as Princess Lyra's loyal guards joined the fight against the Duke's forces. Through the smoke and noise, Jake saw Ryan Foster and Pete Collins from his own crew fighting alongside the freed prisoners. Behind them came Zephyrian soldiers wearing the blue uniforms of the Royal Guard. Commander Morrison, Ryan called out. We thought you might need some help. Jake rose from cover as the shooting died down. Duke Mordaine's soldiers had been overwhelmed by the combined force of humans and loyal Zephyrians. The Duke himself stood with his hands raised, his weapon taken away by Captain Tony Richards. Princess Lyra stepped forward, her royal authority restored. Uncle Mordaine, you are under arrest for treason against the crown and crimes against sentient beings. Duke Mordaine glared at her with hatred. You think this changes anything? My supporters still control half the military. This civil war is just beginning. Maybe, the princess said calmly, but the people have seen what your methods produce. Dead humans, dead Zephyrians, and no solution to our population crisis. Jake approached the princess. Your Highness, what happens now? Now we try to clean up the mess my uncle created. Dr. Hayes, are you still willing to work with our scientists to find a real solution? Dr. Hayes looked around at the freed human prisoners and the loyal Zephyrian guards working together. I think we might have learned something important here. Cooperation works better than force. Pete Collins approached Jake with a serious expression. Commander, we've been monitoring communications from Earth. Admiral Kate Murphy is leading a fleet toward this system. She's not coming to negotiate. Jake felt his stomach drop. How long until they arrive? 3 days, maybe less. And Commander, she's bringing everything. Battleships, carriers, assault troops. Earth thinks we're all dead. Princess Lyra overheard the conversation. Commander, if your military arrives expecting a war, my people will respond with force. Thousands will die on both sides. Jake realized that their problems were far from over. They had stopped Duke Mordaine's coup, but now they faced the possibility of a full-scale war between humanity and the Zephyrian Empire. The freed prisoners looked to him for leadership, and the princess waited for his decision. Dr. Hayes stepped forward. Jake, we need to get a message to Admiral Murphy before she starts shooting, and we need to prove that cooperation between our species is possible. Tony Richards nodded. The prisoners are willing to volunteer for Dr. Hayes's research if it means preventing a war. Jake looked around at the faces watching him. Humans and Zephyrians, who had been enemies an hour ago, were now working together. But would that be enough to convince two military forces preparing for battle? Princess, Jake said finally, I need to get back to my ship and contact Admiral Murphy. But I also need your word that the human prisoners will be treated as guests, not test subjects. You have my word, Commander. But I need something from you as well. What? Princess Lyra met his eyes. I need you to help me convince your admiral that peace is possible. Because if this turns into a shooting war, both our species will lose far more than we could ever gain. Admiral Kate Murphy stood on the bridge of the battleship Enterprise, watching the Zephyrian capital world grow larger on the main screen. Behind her, a fleet of 30 human warships, prepared for what might be the first interstellar war in human history. The Admiral was a veteran of conflicts throughout the solar system, and she had never backed down from a fight. Admiral, her communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from Commander Morrison's ship. He claims to be alive and requests permission to speak with you directly. Admiral Murphy frowned. That's impossible. Our last intelligence indicated that the Endeavor and its crew had been captured or destroyed weeks ago. The signal is definitely coming from the Endeavor, ma'am. And voice analysis confirms it's Commander Morrison. The Admiral considered her options. She had come here expecting to find human prisoners, or worse. The idea that Jake Morrison was alive and apparently free to use his ship's communications was unexpected. Put him through, she ordered. Jake Morrison's familiar voice filled the bridge. Admiral Murphy, this is Commander Morrison. I know you're here to rescue human prisoners, but I need you to listen carefully before you make any military moves. Commander, report your status immediately. Are you under duress? No, ma'am. I'm aboard the Endeavor with my crew. We're all safe, and most of the human prisoners have been freed. But Admiral, the situation here is more complex than we thought. Admiral, Murphy exchanged glances with her tactical officer. Commander, explain what you mean by complex. The Zephyrians are divided. There was a faction led by someone called Duke Mordaine who wanted to use force against humans. But Princess Lyra, who appears to be the legitimate ruler, stopped him. She's been trying to find a peaceful solution to their problem. The Admiral was skeptical. Their problem? Commander, they kidnapped 300 humans for genetic experiments. Yes, ma'am, and that was wrong. But Admiral, they're facing extinction. Their population is dying out, and they thought human DNA might save them. The experiments failed because they were using force instead of cooperation. Admiral Murphy felt her patience wearing thin. Commander Morrison, Are you suggesting we negotiate with aliens who kidnap and experiment on humans? There was a pause before Jake responded. Admiral, I'm requesting permission to bring Princess Lyra aboard the Enterprise, under a flag of truce. I think if you meet her, you'll understand what we're dealing with. Absolutely not. I'm not allowing alien representatives aboard my flagship. Another voice came through the communication system, this one with the strange accent Admiral Murphy had heard in the original Zephyrian transmission. Admiral Murphy, this is Princess Lyra etc. I understand your anger, and I take full responsibility for the crimes committed against your people. Admiral Murphy's tactical officer whispered, urgently, in her ear. Ma'am, our sensors show massive Zephyrian fleet movements. They have over 100 ships moving to intercept us. The Admiral activated her microphone. Princess, if that's what you really are, I want all human prisoners returned immediately. Then we'll discuss what happens next. Admiral, Jake's voice interrupted. All the prisoners are already free, but there's something else you need to know. Dr. Hayes has been working with Zephyrian scientists, and they've made a breakthrough. What kind of breakthrough? Dr. Lisa Hayes' voice joined the conversation. Admiral, we've found a way for both species to benefit from genetic cooperation. The Zephyrians can regain their reproductive capability, and humans can gain resistance to diseases and extended lifespans. But it only works if both sides participate willingly. Admiral Murphy was quiet for a long moment. The idea of humans living longer and healthier lives was appealing, but she had not come here to make deals with kidnappers. Admiral Princess Lyra said, I propose a demonstration. Allow me to bring a small ship to a neutral location between our fleets. Commander Morrison and Dr. Hayes can explain what we've discovered. The tactical officer spoke urgently. Admiral, the Zephyrian fleet has stopped advancing. They're holding position, but ready to fight if we make any aggressive moves. Admiral. Murphy realized she was facing a decision that would affect the future of humanity. If she attacked, thousands would die on both sides. If she negotiated, she might be seen as weak by her own government. Commander Morrison, she said finally, I want you and Dr. Hayes aboard the Enterprise in 1 hour. You can bring this princess, if you insist, but any tricks and we start shooting. Understood, Admiral. We're on our way. An hour later, Admiral Murphy met the strangest diplomatic party in human history. Commander Morrison looked tired but healthy. Dr. Hayes carried data tablets and wore the excited expression of a scientist who had made an important discovery. Princess Lyra was tall and elegant, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that seemed both ancient and young. Admiral Murphy, Princess Lyra said, inclining her head in what might have been a bow. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I know you have little reason to trust my people. Admiral Murphy studied the alien princess carefully. Your Highness, my primary concern is the safety of human citizens. Your people kidnapped and killed dozens of humans. Why should I believe anything you say? Because she stopped it, Jake said. Admiral, Princess Lyra risked her own life to free the human prisoners and arrest the people responsible for the experiments. Dr. Hayes stepped forward. Admiral, may I show you what we've learned? She activated a holographic display that showed complex genetic charts. The Zephyrians have been trying to solve their population crisis for decades. Their previous approach was crude and doomed to failure, but working together, we've developed a process that could help both species. Admiral Murphy examined the data. Dr. Hayes, I'm not a scientist. Explain this in simple terms. Humans and Zephyrians can exchange genetic benefits through a process similar to vaccination. Humans would gain longer lifespans and better disease resistance. Zephyrians would regain genetic diversity and the ability to have children. But it requires voluntary participation from both sides. Princess Lyra added, Admiral, this process would take years to perfect and implement. It cannot be forced or rushed. Both our peoples would need to cooperate on a level never before seen between different species. Admiral Murphy was quiet for several minutes, considering the implications. And if we refuse, then my people will eventually go extinct, and humans will remain isolated in this part of the galaxy, the princess said. But Admiral, there is another factor you should consider. Which is, Jake answered. Admiral, the Zephyrian Empire spans 50 worlds and includes dozens of other alien species. If we can prove that cooperation works better than conquest, it could change how humanity is viewed throughout the galaxy. Admiral Murphy looked out at the Zephyrian fleet through the Enterprise's viewing windows. Each of those ships could probably destroy several human vessels, but they were holding position, waiting for her decision. Princess Lyra, the Admiral said finally, what exactly are you proposing? A joint research facility, where humans and Zephyrians work together to perfect the genetic cooperation process. Volunteer participants from both species. Complete transparency, and the right for either side to withdraw at any time. Dr. Hayes nodded enthusiastically. Admiral, this could be the most important scientific breakthrough in human history. Admiral. Murphy was a military officer, trained to think in terms of threats and responses. But she was also responsible for protecting humanity's future, and that might require thinking beyond traditional military solutions. I'll need to contact Earth Command, she said. This decision is beyond my authority. Princess Lyra smiled. Of course. But Admiral, while you're waiting for instructions, perhaps you would allow Dr. Hayes to continue her research. Time is important for my people. Jake stepped forward. Admiral, I volunteer to be the first human test subject for the new process. Absolutely not, Commander. Ma'am, someone has to prove that this works safely. I trust Dr. Hayes, and I trust Princess Lyra. Admiral Murphy looked around at the faces watching her. Jake Morrison was a good officer who had never let her down. Dr. Hayes was brilliant and completely dedicated to her medical oath, and Princess Lyra, despite being an alien, seemed genuinely committed to finding a peaceful solution. Very well, the Admiral said. We'll establish a temporary research facility on a neutral world. Both fleets will maintain safe distances, while the research continues. But Princess, if any humans are harmed, this cooperation ends immediately. Princess Lyra nodded. Agreed, Admiral. And Admiral Murphy, thank you for giving peace a chance. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood in the garden of the joint research facility, watching human and Zephyrian children play together. The genetic cooperation process had been successful beyond anyone's dreams. Humans were living longer and healthier lives, while Zephyrian birth rates had returned to normal levels for the first time in centuries. Dr. Hayes approached him with a smile. Jake, the latest test results are amazing. The genetic integration is working perfectly in all volunteer subjects. Jake looked at his hands, noting the slightly blue tint that indicated successful genetic modification. He felt stronger and healthier than ever before, and Dr. Hayes estimated he might live for several hundred years. Princess Lyra joined them, carrying a small child with features that blended human and Zephyrian characteristics. Commander Morrison, I wanted to thank you again for your courage. Without your willingness to volunteer, none of this would have been possible. Jake smiled at the child, who looked back at him with curious eyes that held intelligence beyond her apparent age. Your Highness, I think we all learned something important. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to help each other instead of fighting. Admiral Murphy's voice came through Jake's communicator. Commander Morrison, Earth Command has approved the establishment of a permanent joint research facility. They're also interested in expanding cooperation to include other alien species in the Zephyrian Empire. Jake looked out over the research facility, where humans and Zephyrians worked side by side in laboratories and living quarters. The future was full of possibilities that no one had imagined when Princess Lyra first demanded human DNA. "Admiral," Jake replied, "I think we're just getting started." Princess Lyra shifted the child to her other arm and smiled. "Commander, in our language we have a saying that translates roughly to diversity creates strength. I believe humans understand this concept better than any species we have encountered." Dr. Hayes nodded. "The genetic cooperation process works because both species bring unique strengths to the partnership. Neither of us could have solved this problem alone." Jake thought about the journey that had brought them here, from the desperate demand for human DNA to this peaceful research facility where two species were building a shared future. Humanity had proven once again that their greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons, but their ability to adapt and cooperate even in the most challenging circumstances. As he watched the human and Zephyrian children playing together, Jake realized that the future of both species was in good hands.